Hi everyone, Kev from Basketball Victoria here. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about game and grade default settings and what each of them mean. All PlayHQ competitions have game and grade default settings. When you create a competition, it will ask you to set your settings, and you've also got the ability to edit them later on. And it's really important to get these right before you create grades in going forward in any of your competition seasons, because the grades that you create will automatically inherit the default settings you've got here. So you can save yourself a lot of time by getting these right first before you create your grades. So here I'm creating a new competition, and it's going to ask me to set my game default settings. So I'll just talk you through what each of them mean. The first one here is the game sheet template. So most of us these days don't print score sheets, but if you do, you've got a choice of the old domestic landscape format or the FIBA portrait format. The period type is whether you play the game in halves or quarters. The period length, in this case, I'm playing 20-minute halves, and the game slot time is the amount of time between tip-off. So how much time is allocated to each game. I like to have period scores on because what it enables you to do is it will, as a participant, you can view how many points were scored in each period. So for example, if you've won the game, but you had a really, you could tell whether you've had a really slow first half and then you had a big comeback in the second half. And for basketball, we generally select by period. End of period is more the quarter by quarter progress scores that you see in Aussie rules. The lineup limits stipulate the minimum number of players and the maximum number of players that are allowed in a game. And for domestic purposes, you can either set that to, you can leave it as is because the referees already know typically that you're allowed a minimum of 4, or you could actually enforce that on the score sheet. You could set a limit of how many coaches can be allocated to a game, but in most cases, we don't need to worry about that because we have enough difficulty finding one coach per team. Now over here, you've got overtime. So more often than not, we don't play overtime in the regular season. We play them in finals only. So whereas in a regular season, if there's a tie, the game becomes a draw. And over here, you could set how many minutes of overtime you like to play. I personally like to play 3 minutes of overtime. You've already played 40 minutes of the game approximately. And why I like to reduce the number of minutes per overtime is so that if you've got a big grand final day and you've got a triple overtime in the first time slot of the day, it will throw out the rest of your schedule. However, please make sure that whatever you do use is reflected in your bylaws. And in basketball, typically we only shoot one way in overtime. We don't do both two sides of the court like is the case in soccer. Timeout limits stipulates how many timeouts per half and overtime, and foul penalties per game and per period for the team. Now, typically in basketball, you foul out on the 5th personal foul, and in halves you shoot penalty free throws on the 9th team foul. However, if you are playing quarters for some of your Premier League competitions, you'll usually set that to 5. Down here, you've got your ladder settings. So sport default has 3 points for a win, 2 for a draw, 1 for a loss, 0 for a forfeit. And over here, you could choose how you want your ladder sorted. Now, the Basketball Victoria standard is points average, where you still get your 3, 2, and 1 for your win, draw, and loss. But rather than sorting the ladder by whoever has most points, you sort the ladder by whoever has the points, whoever the most points divided by the games that they've played. And the reason why we do that is to eliminate the impact of buys. Because if you give a win equivalent for a buy, teams that have more buys can get into finals on the back of those extra buys. And if you don't give points for a buy, then you're disadvantaging teams that have more buys. And then you've also got your second sort, which in most cases will be percentage, which is your 4 divided by your against. You can choose which ladder columns are displayed. And over here, you've got your regrading configuration. So in PlayHQ, the 2 options are, do you want to include all of the results from all grades towards a team's ladder calculation in the grade that they're in? Or do you only want to include game results from their current grade only, excluding any grades that they may have been in prior to regrading? And in most cases, we want to show the latter. We click next to move over to the grade default settings. In basketball, the main sections that you want to look at are the court percentage allocation in the event that you're playing 3-on-3. If you play 3-on-3 and you want to play at both ends of the court, so that your allocations window is going to reflect that and not show that you've got a clash if you've got two games on the one court at the same time, you can turn that on and set that to 50%. However, for most domestic 5-on-5 situations, we don't need to worry about that. You've got player points. So if you want to enforce the number of points that a team is allowed to have of worth of players, so it's like a salary cap based on their VJBL level, you can turn that on. And finals eligibility, which most associations will have to stipulate the number of regular season games you need to play to be eligible to play finals. Once you're done, you can create the competition. And if at any time you ever want to go back in and edit those settings, you can click into the competition and access them from settings and then the game defaults and grade default. Now, as touched on before, it's important to get that right before you create new grades, because every grade you create from now on will automatically inherit the default settings that you've set here. And also note that any changes that you make to the defaults will not impact the existing grades you already created. So that's game and grade default settings. As always, if you require any assistance with anything PlayHQ related, please visit support.playhq.com, scroll down a bit and hit the contact us button.